Hello and welcome. My name is Tabitha, and I am an intuitive coach, a body worker, and a mom. And today I want to talk about the mother wound. Want to or feel compelled to? Let's see, probably more compelled to. This is a conversation that I think needs to be happening more, but it's also a really difficult one for me to talk about. Probably because the wound is pretty deep for me and also painful. It is a painful wound. I'll tell you a little bit about the mother wound from my perspective and why I think it needs to be talked to more in our society and openly so that people can bring the shadows out into the light and to heal them. Because our world has a mother wound that is, I think, really deep and pervasive in our society in general. I often tell my clients, especially my coaching clients in recovery, that I think one of the most dangerous things on our planet is a wounded woman. And that is because her wound will bleed through the family system and destroy family units way more impactfully than anything else. And that is because that unhealed wound doesn't understand secure love, and it creates a perpetual cycle of anxious avoidant attachment styles, which creates this deep wounding in our society, and it tears families apart. It tears them apart. And I just want to know you to know as I'm starting to talk about this that nothing I'm saying is intended to shame, diagnose, or to belittle anyone's life experience. I think that as someone who really worked through the wounds that I had and then, unconsciously even created for my own children, that radical self accountability on this topic is where we kind of need to go with it. There doesn't need to be any shame. This is like generations of humans who were not taught how to love one another. This is a true pandemic in our society, and it's hurting us. It's making us sick. It's making us live with way more pain than we need to be living with. And it's holding us back from stepping into authenticity, love, connection, like real connection, not false connection, but genuine, unconditional love and connection. And it's sad. It makes me sad when I think about it. I feel sad for my own like inner child wound, and I don't even really like saying that, but like the truth is there is an inner child wound that needed to be healed for myself. So I'm gonna just backtrack a second and tell you a little bit about my story. I know I've covered it in my podcast, but today I want to just speak from my heart and not worry about anything other than helping you know that there's a path and a way forward that may not be conventional, but it might be the path for you. It was back in 2020. A client of mine was talking to me about triangulation patterns, and I had never heard about it before. I know I had done an episode before on triangulation, but basically it's the victim, hero, villain cycle. And I thought to myself, like, I had never even heard of that before. Why have I not heard about it? And I don't even know what it is. And I immediately, because back then I was big into learning about just human dynamics and relationships, and I still am. But I was like starving for knowledge because there was something not right in my life, and I couldn't put my finger on it. It was just like I could never maintain my health goals. I could never maintain my financial goals. I could never find relationships that were deeply satisfying, supportive, and like nurturing, and where I felt safe. And there was just like one thing would go right in my life and then something else would fall. And I couldn't figure out what was wrong with me. Like I was on this deep quest to discover why I was so broken. And I read books like the upper limit syndrome, and it was like, oh, you're just hitting your ceiling. And I was like, yeah, but why? Why can't I get past that ceiling? Why is it that I can't have life be better? And I have years and years of journals of pain, but I wasn't registering it as pain. I was just more like, no, these are just people that are, inconveniencing me. Um, so back to the story. So when I first, sorry, this is hard for me to talk about, so I can feel my mind getting distracted because it's like, no, don't tell the painful story. It's not safe. I had to contend with that this morning. But I feel like it's time to talk about it more openly. So my client came in, he talked to me about triangulation, and I started studying about it. And I realized that I felt like the villain in my family of origin all of the time. And I didn't realize that's what I was feeling because I always thought the villain would be like the narcissistic person. No, it's usually the villain who is being catapulted into that position by someone who needs to be seen as a hero or someone who needs to be seen as a victim. And everyone needs a villain, right? So to be the hero, you can't be one without the villain. And I had so much shame that it was like just this suit of shame in my body that I didn't really understand at the time where it came from or how it was created. But once I started studying the dynamics of narcissism and the codependent relationship, I realized that I'd lived in that prison my whole life. And there was a few books that really helped me. The first was The Human Magnet Syndrome. That one helped me understand both parties in that dynamic and how they're attracted to one another. Another one is it was The Passive Aggressive Narcissist. And I remember that book completely shattered my reality because as I was reading it, now I had owned this book for 3 years before I read it. I tried to read it 3 years before, but something stopped me. I'm pretty sure it was the part of my ego that didn't want me to see the truth. And that will happen on your journey, especially if you're really seeking truth, because there are parts and aspects of you that do not want to heal. And for good reason. I mean, it's not a fun journey all of the time. It's hard and it's heartbreaking, and there's a lot of pain and there's a lot of loneliness that needs to be released from your body. And so the passive aggressive narcissist, I remember when I read that and I was like, wow, this just explained my whole life. And I don't know if you've ever had that experience where you had like a book or you saw a post or a YouTube video and you were like, oh my God, that literally explains my whole life. That was that book for me. And I remember I read it and I called my father, and him and my mom had been divorced for 40 something years, like they weren't together. And I said, is my mother a narcissist? And his reply was immediately like, oh, your mom had a hard life and she had a lot of trauma. And I said, yeah, but that doesn't negate the fact that is she a narcissist? And I think at that moment I realized what I was really dealing with. And it's like the moment you see the truth of something, you can't unsee it. And I really started looking into narcissistic abuse and what that looks like in your life as a grown up. And now I knew I was always dating people who were either addicts or had strong narcissistic tendencies. I don't really like diagnosing people as narcissistic. I'll just say like the behaviors of narcissism. So we can remove the need to diagnose people because I think that a lot of the time we get stuck on the diagnosis instead of just saying these behaviors create this reaction in a relationship. Um, Gaslighting to me is looking back one of the greatest things that, not greatest, I mean, had the biggest impact on my ability to trust myself. And as I've been going down the path of waking up to my intuition and, listening to my higher self and my spirit guides and, those types of things that have been coming into my life, the gaslighting has made me trust myself the least. And I would say that that was the hardest thing for me to heal from because once the gaslighter's out of your life, if you were raised in narcissistic family systems, chances are you gaslight yourself a lot, especially when they're gone, because that communication style, that level of control and manipulation is part of the structure of love. And that unconscious structure of love is what governs a lot of your patterns of behavior. And that I think is so sad and miserable to recover from because I used to love my mind. And I remember the other day, I actually had written in my journal when I was doing in automatic writing, which is part of a intuition training, um, was don't trust your mind today. And later that same day, I was having these thoughts that like certain people couldn't be trusted in my life and that I was alone and that everyone was out to get me. And this is not a pattern that I get into very often, especially since I've done a lot of the healing work around this wound. But that particular day, I could feel the old rumination patterns coming into my mind. And I remember I always seem to pick up my automatic writing right when I need to read it. And I was about to like text somebody how horrible they were and that I didn't want them in my life anymore. And then I read, "Don't trust your mind today." And I had to take a deep breath and go, "Uh-oh, what is my like ego doing right now?" And I was like, "Oh, it's villainizing people that you might care about." And that is scary to me because I think when you can't see it, it's like something takes over. Like it puts on a different pair of glasses and you can't see outside of it. You don't even know you're in it because it's so real. And when I picked up my book and I read that, and I just started breathing into my heart and I started connecting back in with my higher self. And one of the tools that I do a lot is I'll say, higher self, just come in and take over. And because the higher self doesn't have the wound of narcissism, it's not there. It's not in your soul. This is a human wound. This is not a soul wound. I mean, it doesn't mean that your soul can't carry it from lifetime to lifetime. However, this is a human condition of the ego. This is not like on that soul level. So I breathe into my higher self and I'll just say, higher self, come in. I give you permission, like just take over for a minute and breathe into my heart. And when I do that, something shifts and it's almost like that filter of pain and separation and terror melts. And then I'm just reminded that we're all human beings having a human experience. And some signed up for the pain and torture series. And the, and so we're healing from that. So that is one of the best ways to just kind of get onto your wound and your ego. And the reason I'm talking about this today specifically is that Mother's Day is coming up on Sunday, and I feel like a lot of people, and I'm not going to say just women, but people have a mother wound. And Mother's Day can be really challenging for those of us who have a deep wound from the feminine. And it can make us not trust women. It can make us have a lot of, and if you're a woman and you don't trust women, that creates a problem because then you don't trust yourself. In the male female dynamic of a relationship, that unhealed feminine wound can create massive conflict and lack of trust and respect in a relationship. I see this often with my clients, especially my coaching clients who want to have children, but they're so terrified of them inflicting the same wound on their own children. And, they're also afraid of like their wound coming up because it does. I mean, our kids bring our wounds up. Like that's what they're there for. They're little wound erupters. And they're all healers too, like they help us heal those wounds. But um, so just to backtrack and stay focused on the mother wound. Um, if you have a wound that feels like it's just like you can't even address it because there's so much salt in the wound. I want you to know that there are ways to heal it faster than you've been told. Now, I tried therapy. It did not work for me because my structure of my conscious mind to protect my pain was so good. It was so great that I would give the therapist a fabulous story, and then they would never be able to get deeper than that because I could not get deeper than that. So I had all of these behaviors I couldn't shift, and I would outsmart. And I don't mean that like in a positive way, any kind of like professional who tried to help me. That is literally why I'm the biggest advocate for intuitive coaching because us and like those of us who are trained responsibly with intuition can see right past your firewall. And there's like for instance, I can see the pattern clearly that's running across all of the different areas of your life. And it's like this. How I like to explain it to people is let's say you want to lose weight or make more money or find a love match. Those are the three biggies, right? In the world. Those are the three things people want the most and purpose. And let's say like, oh, things are going great in your health journey and you're losing weight, but then like the you don't feel like your relationship is going to hold up with this transition, right? And or maybe you stop making as much money. The sabotage pattern needs to exist in your consciousness in order to keep proving the truth of your family of origin, the lies that you were told, the contracts that you made with your parents. And I have other podcast episodes on that. So, and I'm not going to go deep into that, but basically, if you're unconscious, if your identity says, I'm not worthy of love, when you start loving yourself, you'll find some place of your house to move that baggage. So you might take that into your relationship. You might put it into your career. You might put it into your purpose. You might put it into your community. That box of junk, which is what those old beliefs are, has to live in this house. And that's why, like, when you go after the relationship wound or the body wound or the money wound, whatever it is that you want to create, and you're only looking at that, some other area of your life might fall if you're not looking at the entire structure of your reality. And that is what I would do would be like, okay, I'm going to take this codependent, um, wounded, you know, identity structure and I'm going to move it from my health over here to my relationship. So as I started getting healthy, it always seemed like my partner would have something against me, or I would move it over to my career, like something would start failing over there, or even like, oh, my kids are taking this from me and I can't get this done. And there, it always had to exist. And so when I started studying with Chris Duncan and William Whitecloud's work and Colette Stryker, and these people who were addressing trauma in an entirely different way, I realized that the reason I hadn't been able to shift things like my weight, my finances, and my relationships was because my unconscious programming was so anchored in narcissistic abuse that anytime I tried to go for something, even though there were no more narcissists left in my life, I would create my own narcissistic structure where I was becoming my own narcissist. And that's like the inner critic and the self-doubt and the self-gaslighting and manipulation. And so when we look at like what William Whitecloud teaches, it's all about structural alignment. Like you need to create the blueprint for the new house that you want to live in. And that new house is going to have the type of furniture that you want, the people you want, the experiences you want. And as you focus on that, kind of the old blueprint, the old structure is just going to collapse. And then Colette Stryker took for I think his name was Fritz, Gary Flint's work on superconscious, and she integrated that into her healing modalities, and that was where we could use this higher self to come in and help just blow up the boxes and be like, okay, they don't need to be there anymore. Let's just get rid of the boxes. And Chris, what he did was he took the two of them and brought them together and said, actually, what we need to do is we need to create the new structure and we need to blow up the boxes. And that's a lot of how I work and how I teach in my coaching programs is let's create a life that's so beautiful and meaningful to you that this structure of narcissistic abuse doesn't exist there. So we're not going to be taking the boxes. We're not moving them from room to room. We're basically burning it down and creating an entirely new structure. Now, there's a lot of things from the old house we're going to keep, right? We might really like them. So when I say burning it down, I don't mean like literally, but we're going to be taking a lot of the parts and aspects of us with us because that's who we are. It is an interesting journey to go on. And I would say it feels a lot like if I had to explain it to someone who didn't understand what it feels like, being in prison like your whole life, like, and then one day being given the key to your freedom and you're kind of like kicked out into the world and you don't really know how to be free. That's a lot of what it feels like coming out of the prison of narcissism and codependency. And a lot of the time it can be painful and it can be really lonely um, because your entire world is going to shift and change. And narcissists are not going to want to be around you anymore. They just don't like you anymore. And congratulations, it's lovely. But also when most of your world was narcissism and codependency, and then you leave that world, you're like, oh no, like, what do I do now? And then you kind of meet the secure attachment people who don't understand that world at all. And you feel weird, like, oh, well, I don't know how to fit in with you either. You guys don't even understand the planet I just came from. And so it leaves you kind of in this limbo place of where do I belong and where do I fit in? Because I don't want to be in the world of codependency and narcissism anymore. And, that's what I'm familiar with. I also don't understand these people living over here in Secureville. Like, they're weird. Like, they didn't have to worry about, any of the things that I grew up worrying about. And so yeah, I would say there's got to be a space in between. And that I would say is kind of the essence of Soma Rising, which is my membership is for the people who are on that journey of releasing the like prison state of narcissism and codependency and don't really understand how to live in Secureville yet. And they're navigating the waters. And it's funny because I don't really talk about my intuition training or my membership a lot, but that was why I created it, was because I wanted to give people a space for the in between. Like, okay, like you don't yet know how to live in Secureville, but you don't want to go back over there. So this is the place where you can heal and recover. And this is also a place where you can learn how to live in alignment with your higher self, how to awaken your own intuitive genius and gifts in a very safe, very respectful way. And also to explore yourself, your identity, who you are and who you're becoming, in a way that feels very supportive and loving. Like to me, if you can't hear how many times I've said supportive, that's because that feeling supported on the journey is probably the most important thing that you'll need. And to have people validate that you're not crazy, like this is part of the process of coming out of the prison state. And, if you are in it, like a family dynamic where there's a lot of narcissism and codependency, and you're trying to get out of it, it can be very difficult, because you don't realize how much of your life is constructed around those rules of belonging. I would say if you're resonating with this at all, I'm going to do a free workshop on Sunday, May 11th at 10 a.m. Pacific time. So this is 2025 if you're listening to this at a later date, on healing the mother wound. And I'm going to introduce you to the Superconscious Recode, which if you've listened to my podcast, you can probably tell that there's a couple of recodes in here, so you might have already experienced it. But we're also going to do the 5-step process. I'm going to walk you through the 5-step process to start creating really healthy relationships in your life. And just really quickly, what that looks like is first you have to define what you want to experience. So we're going to paint the new house, right? Like we're going to create the vision of the new house. And that is going to look like, there's 5 basic rooms that I work with all of my clients. It's first you want healthy, loving relationships. You want a life that you love. You want to live your true nature and purpose, health and vitality, and to be an empowered creator, meaning that you're the one who is creating your reality, not reacting to other people's storylines. We don't want to, we want to be the person who's in charge, of our lives. And then, so we create like kind of a new structure for you, a new blueprint for your life. And lately, I've been working with the Divine Feminine, which has been so much fun. I like once I started connecting with the Divine Feminine and teaching it through that lens of healing through journeying and recode and hypnotherapy and just basically taking everything that I learned over the last 20 years in the wellness industry and putting it into a shortened version to help people heal as fast as possible. I've just been having fun with it. Like I've been enjoying creating these really cool meditation journeys, to help you connect in with different deities and guides. And it's just more of a magical way of healing. And I believe that we heal faster in community. We heal through storytelling. We heal through creating a life that is so compelling to us that nothing will derail us from moving into it. And that is really the essence of what I do. So, step one, we're going to create that. Step two, we do need to take an honest look at where we're at now. Now, the reason we do step one first, creating the vision, is because there might be a lot of stuff wrong in your current reality. We only want the stuff that's blocking you from that vision. We don't need it all. We just need that piece of it. Otherwise, it can be way too overwhelming. It's like walking into, a house that's had a hoarder inhabiting it for the last 45 years and going, oh my God, where do we even start? So that's why we need the vision first. We're going to come look at the current reality and go, okay, well, what is your life like now in comparison to that? You want to understand the tension between the two. So how many boxes are in your basement, basically? And once you kind of understand the two tension points, then we're going to move into the processes. So that's where superconscious recode, hypnotherapy, looking at habit changes, things like that are going to come in and help us to remove the baggage that doesn't allow us to have the thing that we want. And then step four is we're really going to be aligning with our higher self and our soul and listening to our intuitive guidance because your soul already knows how to get you there. Your higher self, your superconscious knows how to get you there. Now, superconscious and soul are not the same thing, but I'll talk about that more in a different episode. There's already an instruction manual, except your ego doesn't understand it because it probably has like unconditional love, surrender, oh my God, vulnerability, like all of the things that you don't understand yet are in the new instruction manual. And so there needs to be some patience for yourself as you learn how to read this new foreign language. But the language of intuition is really in the lack of control. It is in the space between where you do not have any kind of buy-in on the end, like the way it needs to be done. So most of us go out to do something and we think it needs to be done this way. Intuition will come and say, no, actually, if this is the thing that you want, this is the way to do it. And most of the time, it doesn't make any logical sense, which probably means it's the right solution. So, and then the fifth step is, you're taking that inspired action, you're reassessing, is this working? Is this not working? If it's not, we go back and we figure out, okay, what's in the way of it. So why does this matter for the mother wound? Because that wound is like a virus in your unconscious programming. It is the mold in the walls. It is the cracked foundation for how you perceive yourself, the world, and others. It is what built most of your beliefs, your biology, your just entire structure of reality, because that was the first person who had a physical influence on you because you grew in their stomach, in their womb. And one of the processes we use in with superconscious work is we go and we heal the wound, the inner wound where you picked it up in your biology and your physiology. Because that, I mean, I remember there was a strange month where I remember we just did a lot of womb work, and I was like, man, how much junk did I pick up in that woman's wound? And it was a lot. It was a lot. We have a long history of wounded women in my family. So I'm hopefully breaking that cycle for my kids and doing the best I can to help other people break the cycle in their own families. And I just want to say that there's nothing to be ashamed of here. Like, it's just what it is. We can let go of the controversy and the shame and the blame and the charged energy around it. Let's just get to healing already. Like, let's just it's time to move on. And that is we just need to create healthy relationships. And it might take a little time for you to understand what that looks like for you. And that's okay. Like it's okay because depending on how deep your wound is or how much of your life is not going the way that you would like it to go, it is going to help you restructure that. It doesn't take 30 years in therapy. It doesn't take all of these like outrageous ayahuasca journeys. It doesn't take that. It takes an open heart and your willingness to move forward and let it go. And I would like to say that that was easy, but that was part of the probably the hardest part was just letting it go and deciding that it was time to move into a new era where I'm allowed to have safe, healthy, loving relationships, to be seen, to be heard, to think that my life matters, and that the gifts that I have to share with people matter, and that it's time to stop hiding and be present in the world in a way that helps other people on their journey. So wherever you're at in your journey, I hope you come to the healing on Sunday. Um, and if you're listening to this and you don't need it, congratulations. I'm really happy for you. But if you are listening to this and you do need it, come along. I also have a free Aphrodite meditation. I'm going to put the link in the show notes. It is such a fun meditation that I co-created with the goddess Aphrodite to help you heal your love wound. And I listened to it every day last month. And I will say it brought a lot of my baggage up. But I also left a lot of that wound in April, which feels really good to say out loud and actually mean it. So if that sounds like something you're interested in, I'm going to put the link down below. Enjoy it. It is a fun co-creative experience with Aphrodite. And I look forward to hearing from you and if you have any insights about your own journey on recovering, love and your definitions of love. So thank you so much for taking the time to listen today. And I just want you to know that I appreciate you and I appreciate the support that I get around this podcast because most of the time I feel like I don't want to do it. And my higher self is always like, please do it. And I'm always like, but no, I don't want to. Nobody hears what I have to say. And then somebody randomly will call me or text me and be like, I was listening to your podcast. And I was like, oh, you're the person. Oh, that's nice. So, when I don't worry about um, it being a sales tool or strategy or things like that, my podcast feels fun and flowy. And that's what I've decided I'm going to keep it as is just a way to inspire people to make changes and heal their lives so that they can live in a fully empowered state. And that is my mission is to help people heal, and live an empowered life. So have a wonderful day. And if you are a mother, happy Mother's Day. It is a hard job and somebody's got to do it. And wherever you're at with it, you're doing a good job. Have a good day.